Headlights tore through the night on the dirt road leading into the Harper farm at 11:30 on a Thursday night. Evelyn, dressed in an old set of pajamas with her brown hair hastily tied back, was about to switch off the porch light and go to bed, when two glossy black SUVs rolled slowly to a stop at the gate. Her heart kicked into a wild rhythm. Her hand reached for her father's hunting rifle hanging on the wall. No one came out here at this hour. Not unless they were Raymond Baxter's people. 2 years earlier, her parents had died in a trucking accident on the road back from the farmer's market. They had left her this land and a debt of $150,000. That debt now sat in Raymond's hands. A loan shark known for leaving dead animal carcasses on the doorsteps of people who couldn't pay. Evelyn had gotten used to fear. She lived with it every night. But tonight, something felt different. A car door opened. A tall man in an expensive black suit stepped out. Not one of Raymond's thugs. This man carried a kind of power that would make even Raymond lower his head. Even in the dim light, Evelyn could see how exhausted he looked. Black hair faintly graying at the temples. Gray eyes sharp and storm cold. A pale scar running from the corner of his eye down his left cheekbone. And that face, the face of someone who had forgotten how to smile a long time ago. He walked toward the porch with steady, decisive steps. "Are you Evelyn Harper?" His voice was low and cold, more used to giving orders than making polite inquiries. Evelyn raised the rifle to her chest, aiming straight at the stranger. "Who are you?" "This is private land." He didn't flinch. He didn't even glance at the gun. "The gun isn't loaded. I heard the hollow metal when you cocked it." Evelyn went pale, but she didn't lower it. "I'm not here to hurt you." He stopped at the bottom step. And Evelyn saw something in those gray eyes that made her hesitate. Desperation. Real desperation. Unhidden. "I'm here to offer a deal." Near midnight. 2 black cars. A man in a suit with a scar on his face. Evelyn tightened her grip on the stock. "What kind of deal?" "Marry me." Before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Evelyn blinked. "What did you just say?" "I need a wife. There are 10 hours and 27 minutes left." He pulled out his phone and held it up so she could see a legal document. "My father died 3 weeks ago. He left a will with one condition. I have to marry within 30 days or everything goes to Adrian, my younger brother." "And what does that have to do with me?" "Adrian is the one behind Raymond Baxter." Evelyn froze. The rifle trembled slightly in her hands. You know about Raymond?" "I know everything. The debt of $150,000. The times he's threatened you. The dead dog he left on your doorstep last week. The calls at midnight." The man stepped up one stair, his gray eyes fixed on hers. "If I lose, Adrian takes control. And Raymond will have full permission to do whatever he wants to you. But if I win, then what?" "Then I erase the debt. All of it. And Raymond Baxter will never set foot here again." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "Nathan Sinclair." The name made her step back. Sinclair. Everyone in this region knew that name. The most powerful Mafia family on the East Coast. The kind of men even the police didn't dare touch. "You're Mafia," Evelyn said, her voice dry as dust. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I don't lie ever." Nathan Sinclair stood there in the middle of the night looking like a king who had come to beg. "And because you don't have any other choice, neither do I." Evelyn stared at him, a powerful Mafia boss, standing on her porch in the dead of night, asking her to be his wife. Part of her wanted to slam the door in his face. But there was something in the way he looked at her, as if she were his last hope. And maybe he was her last hope, too. "If I agree," she said slowly. "And I'm not saying I will, but if I agree, I have one condition." His gray eyes brightened. "Anything. You have to come live here on my farm, in my house. For as long as this agreement is in effect." Nathan Sinclair blinked for the first time. The cold composure on his face cracked. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Evelyn lowered the rifle and crossed her arms over her chest. "If you want me to be your wife, even if it's only on paper, then you have to step into my world. Leave the black cars, the expensive suits, and all those men behind. Come live here. Feed chickens with me, fix fences, pick apples, eat the meals I cook, sleep in the living room." She tilted her head, meeting his gaze without wavering. "I need to know what kind of man you are. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy character. If I'm going to tie my name to a Mafia boss, I need to know you're not a monster." Nathan Sinclair was silent for a long time. His gray eyes studied her as if he were seeing something he had never encountered before. Then he nodded. "Agreed. I'll live here. I'll do whatever you need." He climbed the final step and held out his hand. A large hand, rough in places, a faint scar across the knuckles. "So, will you help me? Will you marry me tomorrow morning?" Evelyn looked at his hand, then at his face. This was insane. Completely insane. Marrying a Mafia boss to escape a loan shark. Trading one devil for another. But something inside her whispered that this man was different. That behind those storm-cold eyes was someone desperately searching for something he couldn't name just like her. Evelyn took his hand. I'm Evelyn Harper and yes, I'll marry you tomorrow morning. She gripped him tightly, refusing to back down. But if you betray me, I'll find a way to kill you. Don't think I won't, Nathan Sinclair. For the first time, a hint of a smile flickered across his mouth. Not warm, but no longer ice-cold either. I believe you. Relief flooded his face, so intense, Evelyn almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Come inside, she said, pushing the door wide. We need to talk details, and you look like you need a cup of coffee. Nathan Sinclair, the most powerful mafia boss on the east coast of the United States, stepped into a small wooden house in the middle of the Virginia fields, and neither of them knew that the choice they made tonight would change their lives forever. If you want to know what happens next between the farm girl and the mafia boss, please like this video right now. Don't forget to share it with anyone who loves unexpected love stories and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes. The Harper family's small kitchen had never hosted a guest like this. Nathan Sinclair sat on an old wooden chair, his expensive black suit in stark contrast to the peeling pale yellow walls and the scarred oak table. Evelyn set 2 cups of hot coffee on the table, then sat across from him, keeping just enough distance that she could bolt for the door if she needed to. She didn't trust anyone, especially a mafia boss who had appeared near midnight. Nathan took a sip of coffee, his gray eyes sweeping the kitchen before stopping on the photographs hung on the wall. A middle-aged couple smiling, standing in the middle of an apple orchard. Her parents, he guessed. The ones who were gone, who had left this young woman alone with so much hardship. Tell me, Evelyn said, her voice steadier than he expected. Everything from the beginning. And Nathan told her about his father, Harrison Sinclair, the man who had built an empire with his bare hands, about the heart disease that had taken him 3 weeks earlier, about the will with its strange clause that no one could make sense of. About Adrian, the half-brother who had hated him since childhood, about 300 people in the organization who would be purged if Adrian took power. Evelyn listened without interrupting, without asking for more. She only watched him with bright brown eyes, trying to find a lie in every sentence, but she couldn't find one. Either Nathan Sinclair was telling the truth, or he was a better actor than anyone she'd ever met. An engine sounded outside. Nathan glanced toward the window and said, "My lawyer, William Carter. He's bringing the contract." Evelyn didn't answer. She only stood and opened the door. A man around 55 stepped inside. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a leather briefcase in hand. He looked at Evelyn with curiosity, but asked nothing, only nodded in greeting and set the case on the table. "Miss Harper," William Carter said as he opened it and took out a thick stack of papers. "This is the marriage contract. I drafted it at Mr. Sinclair's request. Every clause is clear and legally binding." Evelyn took the papers. She read slowly, line by line. Nathan watched her, impressed that she didn't rush to sign the way he'd expected. The contract stated plainly that this was a marriage by agreement for a term of 1 year. After 1 year, if they divorced, Evelyn would receive $2 million. The debt of $150,000 would be erased immediately. She would be protected from Raymond Baxter and anyone working for Adrian. Nathan would live at the farm at her request. "I want to add one clause," Evelyn said, setting the papers down and meeting Nathan's eyes. "You are never to touch me without my consent. Never. Even if we are husband and wife on paper." Nathan didn't hesitate. "Agreed." William Carter added the clause, then showed it to both of them to review. Evelyn read it again, making sure everything was exactly as she demanded. She was a farmer's daughter raised in hardship, but her father had taught her to read everything carefully before she signed her name. "Anything else?" Nathan asked. Evelyn thought for a moment. "If you betray me, if you use me like a pawn and then throw me away, I want the right to leave at any time without explanation, and you are not to look for me." "Add it to the contract," Nathan told William. The lawyer nodded and wrote it in. When every clause was complete, William handed the pen to Nathan. He signed the handwriting bold and decisive. Then the pen went to Evelyn. She took it and looked down at the paper. Her hand trembled slightly. This was the moment she couldn't undo. Once she signed, she would become the wife of a mafia boss. Her life would never be the same. But if she didn't sign, Raymond Baxter would come. And this time, he wouldn't leave only dead animals on her doorstep. Evelyn set the tip of the pen to the page and signed. Evelyn Harper. Her small signature beside Nathan's, like her standing beside him. "Done," William Carter said as he gathered the papers. "I'll contact Father Joseph. The ceremony will take place at 4 o'clock in the morning." Here, Evelyn looked out the window. The sky was still pitch black. In a few short hours, she would become Mrs. Sinclair. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the sky outside was still black as ink. Evelyn stood before the mirror in her bedroom, staring at the unfamiliar woman staring back at her. The simple white dress skimmed her gaunt frame, a little loose at the waist because her mother had been fuller when she'd worn it 28 years earlier. It was the only wedding dress in this house, carefully kept in the wardrobe along with the scent of lavender her mother had loved. Evelyn had never imagined she would wear it under circumstances like these. She smoothed the fabric with her fingertips and pictured her mother standing somewhere in the room, watching her with sad eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I don't have any other choice." A soft knock came at the door. Gloria, the older woman who had arrived with Nathan, the one he had introduced as the housekeeper who had cared for him since he was a child, stood outside. "Miss Harper, Father Joseph, has arrived." Evelyn drew a deep breath, then stepped out. The Harper family's small living room had been tidied in a rush. Someone had placed a vase of wild flowers on the table, likely Gloria, picked from the garden. Father Joseph, an elderly priest of about 65 with snow-white hair and kind eyes, stood beside the fireplace. He was an old friend of Harrison Sinclair's, Nathan had said. He watched Evelyn enter with curiosity, but no judgment. Nathan stood there, still in his black suit, but with a fresh tie. When he saw Evelyn in the white dress, he went still. His gray eyes widened just a fraction, and something flickered in that look that Evelyn couldn't read. She moved to stand beside him, her heart stumbling in her chest. William Carter stood as witness along with Gloria and another man Nathan called Dante, his right hand. Only 5 people in that small room, witnessing a wedding unlike any other. Father Joseph opened his prayer book, his warm, steady voice filling the quiet. "Today, before God, we witness the union of 2 souls." Evelyn almost let out a bitter laugh. 2 souls? This was only a deal, a contract, no love, no romance, only the desperation of 2 people with nowhere else to turn. "Nathan Sinclair," Father Joseph continued. "Do you accept Evelyn Harper as your wife? To love and to cherish her in sickness and in health until death parts you?" "I do," Nathan said, his voice low and certain. "Evelyn Harper, do you accept Nathan Sinclair as your husband? To love and to cherish him in sickness and in health until death parts you?" Evelyn swallowed hard. She looked at Nathan, then at Father Joseph. "I do." Nathan pulled a small ring from his jacket pocket. Not a glittering diamond like she had expected, but a simple gold band slightly worn. "My mother's ring," he murmured as he slid it onto her finger. "She died when I was 12. Evelyn looked down at the ring, then up at him. She hadn't expected him to use something that meaningful for a sham marriage. "Now," Father Joseph smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Nathan looked at Evelyn, his gaze asking. She gave the smallest nod. He leaned in and pressed a light kiss to her lips. Just a second. A brief touch, then gone. But in that moment, something made them both pause. A spark of electricity, a heartbeat slipping out of rhythm. Evelyn stepped back, her eyes sliding away from Nathan's. She didn't understand what she had just felt and she didn't want to. "Congratulations," Father Joseph said. "Now before God and the law, you are husband and wife." Evelyn Harper was now Evelyn Sinclair. And beyond the window, dawn was slowly beginning to break. The black SUV glided along winding roads for nearly 2 hours before it finally stopped in front of an old estate on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. Evelyn looked through the window, forcing her face to stay calm, even as her heart pounded like a war drum. The building ahead of her looked like a European castle with towering whitest stone columns and an iron gate worked into intricate patterns. This was where the Council of 5 families met. Nathan had explained on the drive. Sinclair, Castellano, Romano, Chen, and Volov, the 5 most powerful Mafia families on the east coast of the United States. And today they would decide who would lead the Sinclair family. Nathan told her she only had to stand beside him, that she didn't have to say anything if she didn't want to. And Evelyn turned to him and told him she'd speak if it was necessary, and that he shouldn't underestimate her. Something flashed in Nathan's eyes. Maybe surprise, maybe respect. And he didn't answer, only nodded and stepped out. Dante opened the door for Evelyn. She got out, drew a deep breath, and lifted her chin. She didn't have an expensive dress or glittering jewelry like the women she saw entering the building. She only had a simple black dress Gloria had found in Nathan's luggage, slightly loose, but still elegant, but she carried something no one could buy. The pride of someone who'd survived every hard thing life had thrown at her. Nathan placed a hand at her back and guided her inside. The mansion's grand foyer stretched wide and high, the ceiling soaring above them. Crystal chandeliers scattering light like shards of ice. Dozens of men in suits and women in evening gowns stood in clusters, speaking in low murmurs. The moment Nathan and Evelyn appeared, every head turned. Whispers rose and rolled through the room like surf. Evelyn felt the scrutiny, the curiosity, and the contempt in those stares. She didn't belong to this world, and everyone could see it. Still, she didn't bow her head. Her father had taught her never to bow to a bully. A voice rang out, sweet on the surface and sharp with mockery underneath, calling Nathan brother. Evelyn turned and saw a man approaching, a few years younger than Nathan, handsome with neatly combed brown hair and a bright smile. But his eyes were cold as ice, and that smile never reached them. Adrian Sinclair. Evelyn recognized him at once. The man behind Raymond Baxter, the one who turned her life into hell for the past 2 years. Adrian stopped in front of them and looked Evelyn up and down with open disdain, calling her Nathan's new bride and asking where this little girl had come from, saying it seemed he could smell chicken coop on her. A few people nearby giggled. Heat rushed into Evelyn's face, but she didn't retreat. She met Adrian's eyes and gave him a thin smile, telling him that chicken coop was cleaner than the stink of someone who hid behind others to do filthy work. Adrian's smile stiffened. The entire hall fell silent. No one dared make a sound. Adrian took a step closer, his eyes darkening, demanding to know what she'd just said. And Nathan spoke in a voice that was low and dangerous, saying she'd told the truth. He stepped in front of Evelyn, placing himself between her and Adrian, and warned that if Adrian insulted his wife one more time, he'd understand why their father had left everything to Nathan instead of him. The brothers stared at each other, the air pulled tight as a drawn wire. Evelyn stood behind Nathan, looking at the breadth of his back. And for the first time since her parents died, someone was standing in front of her to shield her. The feeling was strange and strangely warm. At last, Adrian stepped back, the fake smile sliding into place again, saying, "Fine, fine." They'd see what the council thought about this lightning-fast marriage. He turned to leave. But before he was gone, he looked back at Evelyn with raw hatred and told her it wasn't over yet, calling her a country girl. The council's meeting room was a large chamber with a rectangular black oak table set in the center. 5 high-backed chairs for the representatives of the 5 families circled the table, and smaller chairs for their companions lined the space behind them. Evelyn sat beside Nathan, fighting to keep her hands from trembling as she felt dozens of eyes picking her apart. The representatives of the other 4 families were already there. Mr. Castellano, a silver-haired man with eyes sharp as blades. Mrs. Romano, the only woman seated in a position of power, her face unreadable. Mr. Chen, quiet and impossible to gauge, and Volov, a large man with a cold expression. The one Nathan had warned was Adrian's ally. Adrian sat across from them beside his mother, an older woman named Vivian, whose gaze burned with hatred every time it landed on Nathan. The chair, Mr. Castellano, spoke. "We are here to confirm the lawful heir of the Sinclair family according to Harrison Sinclair's will. Nathan Sinclair has met the condition of marriage within the required time." Adrian stood at once. "I object. This marriage is a farce." Evelyn felt Nathan go rigid beside her. "Do you have evidence?" Mr. Castellano asked. "Evidence?" Adrian let out a derisive laugh. "Look at her. A country girl no one's ever heard of. My brother meets her last night and marries her this morning. This is obviously a sham marriage. A con to steal the inheritance." Murmurs rippled through the room. Heat rose in Evelyn's face as every gaze swung toward her. "Who is she?" Adrian went on, his voice thick with contempt. "A woman with a debt of $150,000, living alone on a farm that's about to go under. My brother bought her. That's all. This isn't a marriage. It's a transaction." Nathan started to rise, but Evelyn put a hand on his arm, stopping him. Then she stood. The room went silent. Evelyn felt her legs tremble, but she forced herself upright, chin lifted. "You want to know who I am?" Her voice came out calmer than she expected. "I'm Evelyn Harper. My parents were farmers. They died 2 years ago in a truck accident and left me a farm and the debt Mr. Adrian just mentioned. I work 16 hours a day. I don't know anything about your world." She paused, looking around the room, then continued. "But I do know what loyalty is. My father taught me that when you give your word, you keep it. When you stand beside someone, you don't run when things get hard. That's how I was raised. That's how I live." Evelyn turned to Adrian. "You say Nathan Sinclair bought me. You say this is a transaction. So let me ask you something. How many marriages in this room began with pure love? Or were they alliances, power, and money?" No one answered. Evelyn's voice grew stronger. "Nathan Sinclair could have chosen anyone. Women who are rich, powerful, beautiful. But he came to my farm near midnight, not because I had anything, but because he needed someone who wouldn't betray him. I don't have money. I don't have power. I don't have any reason to be here except that I gave my word." She met the eyes of each person on the council. "If you think that's weakness, you're wrong. Loyalty can't be bought with money. It's the only thing that has real value in this world, and it's what I bring to this marriage." She sat down, her heart pounding like a drum. Nathan looked at her with an expression she couldn't read, but something in it warmed her anyway. Adrian opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Castellano raised a hand to stop him. "Enough. We will vote." Evelyn held her breath. This was the moment that decided everything. "The Castellano family," Mr. Castellano said, "votes for Nathan Sinclair." The Romano family. Mrs. Romano said, her voice cold and final. Votes for Nathan Sinclair. The Chen family. Mr. Chen nodded. Votes for Nathan Sinclair. The Volov family. Volkov looked at Adrian for a long moment, then said, votes for Adrian Sinclair. Evelyn felt Nathan exhale beside her. 4 votes in favor, 1 against. The result is 4-1, Mr. Castellano declared. Nathan Sinclair is recognized as the head of the Sinclair family. Adrian shot to his feet, his face flushed with rage. He looked at Evelyn with pure hatred. This isn't over, brother. Your country wife can't protect you forever. Then he turned and walked out of the room, Vivian following close behind. On the drive back in the black SUV, Nathan was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. You surprised me. Evelyn looked out the window. I only told the truth. I know, Nathan said, his voice gentler than usual. That's why I'm surprised. They looked at each other for a brief moment and something shifted in the air between them. Something neither of them was ready to name. That afternoon, Nathan Sinclair officially moved into the Harper farm. Evelyn stood on the porch and watched the black SUV stop at the gate, while 2 men carried in a brown leather suitcase and a few bags. She'd expected an entire convoy of luggage, but it turned out the most powerful mafia boss on the East Coast owned only that much. Dante and 2 other men set up a small tent at the edge of the field. Far enough that it couldn't be seen from the house, but close enough to intervene if anything happened. Evelyn didn't like it, but she understood. Nathan's world didn't allow him to live without protection, not even on a secluded farm like this. The living room, Evelyn said when Nathan stepped inside with the suitcase. As agreed. There's a sofa that pulls out into a bed. Blankets and pillows are in the cabinet in the corner. Nathan looked around the small living room, the old couch with worn upholstery, the outdated television, the family photographs covering the walls. This was her world, and he was only a guest in it. Thank you, he said, setting the suitcase down. Awkwardness filled the house. They had married. They had faced the Mafia council together, and yet, in truth, they were still strangers. Evelyn didn't know what he liked to eat, what time he woke up, or what habits he carried into sleep. And she wasn't sure she wanted to know. I'm going to feed the chickens, she said, needing an excuse to get out of the house. Dinner at 7 o'clock. Then she stepped outside, leaving Nathan alone in the unfamiliar living room. The first days passed in clumsy silence. They moved around each other like 2 planets, trying not to collide. Evelyn woke at 5 o'clock every morning the way she always had. Went out to feed the chickens, water the vegetables, check the fence line. When she came back inside, Nathan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window with an expression that gave nothing away. He wasn't used to the quiet, she guessed. His world was made of meetings and decisions and danger. Hers was made of roosters crowing and wind moving through open fields. Meals were the most uncomfortable part. Evelyn cooked simple food, fried eggs, mashed potatoes, chicken soup, toast. She didn't know if a mafia boss was used to country cooking like that. But she had no intention of changing. This was her home, her kitchen, her life. Nathan didn't complain. He ate everything she made without a word, then washed his own dishes. That surprised Evelyn. She'd assumed a man like him would expect to be served, but he didn't. He handled everything himself as if it were the most normal thing in the world. On the 3rd night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She went downstairs for water and found the living room light still on. Nathan was sitting on the sofa with a laptop open in front of him, the screen casting its glow across his tired face. You're not sleeping? She asked. Nathan looked up. Work. No matter where I am, the empire still needs someone to run it. Evelyn poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of him, then sat in the chair across from him. You're used to working at night. I'm used to not sleeping, Nathan said. His voice softer than usual. Sleep is when people are most vulnerable. Evelyn studied him, the dark circles under his eyes, the faint scar along his cheekbone. She wondered what he had endured to become the man he was now. Cold, watchful, and never allowing himself to be weak. It's safe here, she said. No one knows you're here, and Dante's guarding the place outside. Nathan looked at her for a long time. You believe in safety. I believe in living one day at a time, Evelyn said. Tomorrow, anything could happen. But tonight, you should sleep. He didn't answer. But Evelyn saw his shoulders ease just a little, as if something in what she'd said had reached him. She stood, ready to go back upstairs. Evelyn, Nathan called. She stopped and turned. Thank you, he said, for giving me a place to stay, for not being afraid of me. Evelyn looked at him, a powerful man sitting in her small living room, and he seemed lawnier than anyone she'd ever met. We all need somewhere we belong, she said quietly. Good night, Nathan. Then she went up the stairs without looking back, but she knew he was watching her. And for the first time since they'd met, she didn't feel afraid. Maybe, just maybe, they could learn how to live together without killing each other. 1 week after moving to the farm, Nathan Sinclair decided to make good on his promise. That morning, he woke earlier than usual, pulled on an old shirt Gloria had set out for him, and went outside before Evelyn even had time to get out of bed. When she came down to the kitchen, she found Nathan standing in front of the chicken coop with a bucket of feed in his hand, staring at the flock as if they were enemies he needed to eliminate. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Feeding the chickens," Nathan replied. His tone so serious it sounded like he was delivering a business report. "You said I had to learn to be a farmer." Evelyn was about to say something, but Nathan had already opened the coop door and stepped inside. The chickens rushed him at once, pecking frantically at the bucket. Nathan jerked back, but an aggressive hen managed to peck his hand. He dropped the bucket. Feed exploded across the ground, and the flock went even wilder. Evelyn burst out laughing. She couldn't stop herself. The most powerful mafia boss on the east coast of the United States stood in the middle of a chicken coop, his clothes dusted with feathers and grain, his face wearing the bewildered look of a child on the first day of school. It was the first time she'd laughed since her parents died. Nathan looked at her and instead of anger, a small smile flickered across his mouth. "I'm guessing chickens aren't afraid of the mafia." "Chickens aren't afraid of anything," Evelyn said as she stepped into the coop and calmly shooed the birds aside. "You have to stay calm. Sprinkle the feed slowly. Don't let them see you panic." She showed him how to feed them properly. How to collect eggs without provoking the hens. How to check which ones were sick. Nathan listened with complete seriousness, nodding as if he were absorbing a new business strategy. That afternoon, he moved on to repairing the fence. Evelyn showed him the broken section at the far corner of the apple orchard, the spot she hadn't had time to fix for months. Nathan took a hammer and nails and looked confident as if he'd been doing it his entire life. But the first time he drove the nail in crooked. The second time he hit his own hand and had to clamp his jaw shut to keep from swearing. The third time the whole board dropped because he'd placed the nail in the wrong spot. Evelyn stood beside him and watched him wrestle with boards and nails. She didn't help. She only observed. She wanted to see whether he would give up or keep going. Nathan didn't give up. He pulled it apart. Tried again, pulled it apart, tried again until the sun began to set and the final section of fence finally stood. He looked at what he'd done with a kind of satisfaction Evelyn had never seen on his face. "Done," he said, and there was a hint of pride in his voice. Evelyn stepped closer to inspect it. The fence wasn't perfect. It leaned a little, and the nails weren't even, but it was solid. "All right," she said. "Next time will be better." That night at dinner, Evelyn noticed Nathan struggling to hold his chopsticks. She looked down at his hands and saw angry red blisters across his palms. "Give me your hand," she said. Nathan tried to pull back, but Evelyn caught him, turned his palm upward. The blisters were large, some already split open, raw new skin shining red underneath, the hands of someone who had never done manual labor. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked, her tone edged with reproach. "It's nothing serious. Sit still." Evelyn got up and took the first aid kit from the kitchen cabinet. She sat beside Nathan and gently cleaned the wounds with alcohol, then spread ointment over the broken skin. Nathan said nothing, only watched her work. Her hands were small and calloused, but her movements were careful, almost tender. "You're used to doing this," he said. "My father used to get hurt working the garden," Evelyn replied, her eyes still on the bandage as she wrapped it. "My mother was always the one who took care of him." She wound the gauze around his palm, careful not to pull it too tight. "There. Tomorrow, wear gloves when you work." Nathan looked at the neat bandage, then up at her. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You're working for my farm, so I've got to make sure you still have hands to work with." But she said it with a small smile, and Nathan smiled back. It was the first time they laughed together without awkwardness or weariness. Just two people learning how to live under the same roof, one small step at a time. 2 weeks passed in a peace that felt almost unreal. Evelyn started to get used to having Nathan in the house, used to the sound of his footsteps in the morning, used to the sight of him sitting on the porch with coffee as the sun came up. She almost forgot that shadows were still out there waiting until that afternoon. Evelyn was alone in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard a car out in the yard. She looked through the window and the blood in her veins turned to ice. An old black pickup truck she recognized instantly. Raymond Baxter. He climbed out with 2 goons, still heavy-set. With those narrow, sly little eyes, he looked over the farm with a greedy hunger, as if it already belonged to him. "Evelyn, sweetheart," Raymond called, his voice sweet in a way that made her stomach turn. "Come on out. It's due. You got the money, or you want to pay some other way?" Evelyn tightened her grip on the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables and stepped onto the porch. She didn't shake, didn't cower the way she had before. Maybe because she knew Nathan was somewhere in the house. Or maybe because she was simply exhausted from fear. I told you already, Raymond. I don't have the money. Raymond smiled, a smile made of threat. He climbed the steps and stopped so close she could smell cheap liquor and cigarettes on his breath. Then we'll find another way, sweetheart. He lifted his hand toward her face. A pretty girl like you living all alone. There are plenty of ways to pay a debt. Take your hand off her. A low, cold voice came from behind Evelyn. Raymond looked up and the smile slid right off his face. Nathan Sinclair stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling it, gray eyes sharp as blades, fixed on Raymond with something like death. He stepped down onto the porch and walked toward Raymond with slow, deliberate strides that carried pure threat in every inch. Raymond backed away, his face turning gray. And Nathan Sinclair, he stammered. What? What are you doing here? Nathan didn't answer. He just kept coming and Raymond kept retreating until his back hit the side of his truck. Raymond's two men started forward, but Dante and two of Nathan's men appeared from nowhere and cut them off. She's my wife, Nathan said, his voice low and dangerous, like an animal's growl. The debt is cleared. And if you step foot here again, if you look at her again, if you dare breathe the same air as her, I'll make you disappear from this earth, and no one will ever find your body. Raymond shook so hard his whole frame trembled. I didn't know. Adrian didn't say, please, sir, get out. Raymond didn't need to hear it twice. He jumped into the truck, his men scrambling after him, and the pickup tore off like it was being chased by ghosts, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Nathan watched until the truck was gone, then turned back. Evelyn was still on the porch, still holding the knife, her eyes on him with an expression he couldn't read. You didn't have to do that, she said. Nathan climbed the steps and stopped in front of her. You're my wife. No one threatens my wife. On paper only, Evelyn reminded him. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes deep enough to feel like they could see straight through her. Paper or not, I protect what's mine. Then he walked back into the house, leaving Evelyn on the porch with her heart hammering and a strange feeling she couldn't name. That night, the nightmare came back. Evelyn was standing on the familiar road, the road that led home from the farmer's market. She could see her parents' car driving ahead of her. Could see her mother smiling through the window, could see her father lifting a hand to wave at her. Then the truck appeared. She wanted to scream, to warn them, but her throat felt locked, as if something had tightened around it. All she could do was stand there and watch, helpless. As the truck with failed brakes barreled straight into her parents' car, the shriek of metal, the crash of glass. The sound of screaming, and then silence. A deadly silence. Evelyn jolted awake with a sob caught in her throat and tears soaking her pillow. She sat up fast, her heart punching wildly, sweat dampening the back of her shirt. The room was pitch dark with only moonlight slipping through the gap in the curtains. She hugged her knees, trying to hold the sound of her crying inside, but the pain was too big. 2 years. And the nightmare still followed her into the night. 2 years. And she still couldn't forget the moment the hospital called. 2 years. And she still hadn't been able to say goodbye. A soft knock sounded at the door. Evelyn. Nathan's voice. Low and worried. She meant not to answer, meant to pretend she was asleep, but the broken sound of her breathing gave her away. Evelyn, are you all right? She wiped her tears, forcing herself to steady her voice. I'm fine, just a nightmare. Silence for a long moment. Then Nathan spoke again, quieter than before. Can I come in? Evelyn hesitated. She didn't want anyone to see her like this, weak and shattered. But something in Nathan's voice made it impossible to refuse. Okay. The door opened. Nathan stepped in wearing simple sleep clothes. His black hair slightly rumbled. He didn't turn on the light. He only moved to the chair beside the bed and sat down. Tell me, he said. Not an order, not a demand, just an invitation, gentle and without judgment. And Evelyn, who had kept everything inside for 2 years, who had cried alone in the dark more nights than she could count, who hadn't had anyone to lean on since her parents died, began to talk. She told him about that morning, how her parents had gotten in the car to go to the farmer's market like they did every week. She told him about her mother's smile as she reminded Evelyn to water the vegetables. She told him about her father's wave as he drove out through the gate. She told him about the call from the hospital 3 hours later, about running there like she'd lost her mind, about arriving too late. They were gone before I got there, Evelyn said, her voice shaking. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to tell them I loved them one last time. I don't even remember the last time I said I love you to them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them anymore. Every night I dream it. Every night I'm standing there watching and I can't do anything. I know it's only a dream, but it feels so real. I can't tell the difference anymore. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice as soft as a whisper. My mother died when I was 12. Evelyn looked up at him. In the thin moonlight, she saw his face soften. the scar on his cheek seeming to fade in the shadows. She had cancer. My father hid it. Didn't let me know how bad it was. He said she just needed rest, that she'd be fine. I believed him. Nathan stared toward the window, his gaze distant. That night, she called me into her room. She wanted to talk, but I was busy playing games. I told her tomorrow, Mom, I'll come in tomorrow. His voice caught. There was no tomorrow. She died that night. I didn't get to say goodbye. I don't even know what she wanted to say to me. Evelyn watched him, her heart tightening beneath the cold power he wore like armor. Nathan was still a child who had lost his mother too soon. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. No one knows. I never tell anyone, Nathan said, turning back to her. You're the first. They sat in silence, sharing a grief that didn't need more words. Two broken souls finding recognition in the last place either of them had expected. They know, Nathan said, and his voice was strangely gentle. Your parents, they know you love them. You don't have to say it out loud for them to know. Evelyn's tears rose again, but this time the ache wasn't as sharp. Thank you, she whispered. Nathan nodded and stood as if to leave, but Evelyn caught his hand. Stay, she said so softly she wasn't sure he'd heard. I don't want to be alone tonight. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. He sat back down in the chair beside the bed, leaning into it. Sleep. I'm here. Evelyn lay back and closed her eyes. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't afraid to fall asleep. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't alone in the dark. That night, she didn't have the nightmare again. The fall fair was the biggest event of the year in this small town. Evelyn had gone every year with her parents since she was little, selling apples from their orchard and jars of jam her mother made. After they died, she stopped going, not because she didn't have apples to sell, but because she couldn't bear the memories. But this year, looking out at an orchard heavy with fruit, Evelyn decided to return, and Nathan insisted on coming with her. You don't have to go, Evelyn said when she saw Nathan step out of his room in jeans and a red and green plaid flannel shirt. She almost laughed. The powerful Mafia boss looked like a real farm guy. If you ignored the scar on his face and the gray eyes that were still sharp as ever. I want to go, Nathan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. And I need to learn how to sell apples. They loaded baskets of apples into the farm's old pickup and drove to the fair. When they arrived, Evelyn noticed people staring at them with open curiosity. The whole town knew she'd lived alone for 2 years. And now she'd shown up with a strange man, tall and dangerous, handsome. Ignore them, Nathan said when he saw her tense. We've got apples to sell. They set up their stall, arranged the apples, and started working. Nathan wasn't good at this. That much was clear. He was used to commanding instead of inviting. Used to threatening instead of persuading. But he tried. He smiled at customers even though the smile looked a little forced. Helped Evelyn weigh apples and count money. And he even held a crying baby while its mother made her selection. Evelyn watched that and felt her heart soften. Nathan held the baby awkwardly as if he'd never held anything small and fragile in his life. But the baby stopped crying, stared up at him with wide eyes, and Nathan, the infamous Mafia boss, stared back in complete bewilderment. Who is he, Martha? The diner owner Evelyn had once worked for, came over to the stall and asked under her breath. My husband, Evelyn replied. Martha studied Nathan for a long moment, then looked back at Evelyn. He looks at you like you're his whole world. You know that. Evelyn didn't answer, but her cheeks went hot. Martha smiled, gave Evelyn's shoulder a gentle pat, and bought a few apples. The afternoon passed faster than Evelyn expected. They sold nearly everything. And when the sun began to set, they packed up and started the drive home. But halfway back, the old truck suddenly shuddered and died. Evelyn tried the ignition again and again, but nothing. She got out, lifted the hood, and stared at the engine in defeat. It's broken. She sighed. I'll have to call a mechanic. Nathan got out and looked around. They were on a deserted dirt road about 3 kilometers from the farm. No street lights, only a full moon hanging bright in the night sky. Can we walk back? He asked. Evelyn glanced at her small heels, then shrugged. I think so. It's just far. They started walking shoulder to shoulder on the dirt road. The night was strangely quiet. Nothing but insects and the soft rhythm of their footsteps. Moonlight poured down, turning the fields on either side into a shimmering silver sea. It's beautiful, Evelyn whispered, looking up at a sky crowded with stars. You never see this in the city, Nathan said. Too many lights. So, you like it here better? Evelyn asked. Nathan was silent for a moment, then answered. I like it here more than anywhere I've ever been. Evelyn turned toward him and caught him looking at her, too. In the moonlight, his gray eyes didn't look cold anymore. They looked warm, gentle, filled with something she didn't dare name. They stopped in the middle of the road. A light wind moved through, blowing Evelyn's hair across her face. Nathan lifted his hand and gently brushed a few strands away from her cheek. "Evelyn," he said, his voice rough. She looked up at him, her heart stumbling, and Nathan bent down and kissed her, not the formal kiss from their wedding. This was real, slow and tender, carrying everything they'd held back for days. Evelyn closed her eyes and kissed him back. She forgot they were standing in the road. Forgot her aching feet. Forgot everything except the warmth of Nathan's mouth and the strength of his arms around her. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Nathan rested his forehead against hers, his gray eyes searching hers. "I don't know what this is," he whispered. "But I don't want it to end." Evelyn didn't answer. She only took his hand and kept walking. They didn't speak for the rest of the way, but their fingers stayed tightly laced. And when they reached the house, they both knew everything had changed. Happiness never lasts forever, especially in Nathan Sinclair's world. Evelyn should have known that. 1 week after that kiss under the moonlight, when everything between them was slowly turning sweeter, the darkness returned. That afternoon, Nathan had to go into the city to handle business. He didn't want to go. Evelyn could see it in his eyes when he said goodbye. But there were things even a mafia boss couldn't postpone. He promised he'd be back before nightfall, kissed her forehead, then got into the SUV with Dante. Evelyn stood on the porch watching until the black vehicle vanished around the bend. She turned back inside, meaning to start dinner when she heard another car pull up at the gate. She looked out the window and the blood in her veins turned to ice. Adrian Sinclair stepped out alone. No men with him. He wore a gray suit, his hair neatly combed, looking more like a successful businessman than a criminal. But Evelyn knew the snake beneath the skin. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She stepped onto the porch, stood tall, and watched Adrian walk toward her with that familiar fake smile fixed on his mouth. "Evelyn," Adrian said, his voice so sweet it was nauseating. "At last, we have a chance to talk privately. What do you want?" Direct as always. "I like that." Adrian stopped at the bottom step and looked over the farm with open disdain. "This place is simple. Hard to believe my brother is willing to live here. Did you come to criticize my home?" Adrian laughed, then pulled a file from inside his jacket. "I came to show you this." He tossed the file onto the step in front of Evelyn. She looked down at it, but didn't pick it up. "I hired a private investigator to look into you," Adrian continued. "Very interesting. Evelyn Harper, 26, orphaned, buried in debt, living alone on this rundown farm. Then suddenly, my brother appears in the middle of the night and marries you. Nice plot. What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying I have proof your marriage is fake." Adrian stepped up one stair, his ice-cold gaze drilling into her. "The marriage contract, the payment, all of it. Nathan bought you to satisfy the condition in the will. That's fraud." Evelyn felt her heart tighten, but she didn't let it show. Then summoned the council. "Why come here?" Adrian tilted his head, studying her like a fascinating piece of prey. "Because I want to understand. You can leave anytime. Take the money and disappear. But you're still here on this miserable farm with a man more dangerous than anyone you've ever met." He stepped up again. Now level with her. "Do you actually love him? A monster like Nathan Sinclair?" Evelyn met Adrian's eyes without flinching. "He's not a monster. You don't know what he's done. The people he's killed. The families he's destroyed. I know enough. I know he protected me. I know he sat beside me when I had nightmares. I know he learned to feed chickens and fix fences because I asked him to." Evelyn stepped forward, now only inches from Adrian. "And what about you? You were behind a loan shark who threatened me for 2 years. You left dead animals on my doorstep. You turned my life into hell. So, who's the monster here?" "Adrian Sinclair." Adrian stared at her, his eyes darkening. The smile vanished. "You'll regret saying that. I've regretted a lot in my life. Standing beside Nathan isn't one of them." Adrian stepped back, picked up the file. "Fine. You want to play this game? We'll play. I'll call an emergency council meeting, and this time I'll bring proof your marriage is a sham. Nathan will lose everything, and you'll go back to your debt with no one left to protect you." He turned to go, but before he got into his car, he looked back. "Oh, and Evelyn, next time you should lock your doors a little better. This world is dangerous." Then he drove away, leaving Evelyn standing on the porch with her heart racing. She knew Adrian wasn't bluffing. The real war was about to begin. 3 days after the encounter with Adrian, Evelyn stood once again in the council chamber of the 5 families. But this time, it was different. This time, she wasn't a trembling country girl stepping into a world she didn't understand. This time she knew exactly what she was up against, and she was ready. Nathan sat beside her, his face carved from ice, but his hand was clenched into a fist beneath the table. Evelyn knew he was worried, even if he would never admit it. The night before, when she told him about Adrian coming to the farm, she had watched Nathan's gray eyes darken with anger. He'd wanted to go after Adrian immediately, but Evelyn had stopped him. They would face Adrian her way in front of the council. With the truth, Adrian rose, triumph on his lips. He held a thick file and walked to the center of the room like an actor about to deliver the biggest performance of his life. Honored council, Adrian began, his voice heavy with importance. I have undeniable proof that the marriage between my brother and Evelyn Harper is a fabricated agreement designed to seize the inheritance. He opened the file and presented each document in turn. The marriage contract with financial terms, the receipt for the debt payoff, the investigator's report detailing Nathan and Evelyn's first meeting. They met at midnight and married the next morning, Adrian said, dripping contempt. Nathan paid to buy a wife. This isn't a marriage. It's a business transaction, and under council law, a fabricated transaction to seize an inheritance is fraud. Murmurs stirred through the room. Evelyn felt every gaze swing to her, filled with doubt and judgment. Mrs. Romano frowned. Mr. Chin shook his head. Even Mr. Castellano looked displeased. I demand the council annul Nathan Sinclair's inheritance rights. Adrian concluded, victory ringing in his tone. And transfer everything to the next lawful heir. Me. Silence settled over the room. Nathan started to rise to fight back, but Evelyn touched his arm, stopping him. Then she stood. I'd like to speak, she said, her voice clear in the stillness. Mr. Castellano nodded. Permission. Evelyn walked to the center of the room facing Adrian. She didn't look at him. She looked at each council member one by one. Yes, at first this was an agreement. I won't deny it, she said calmly. Nathan Sinclair came to my farm at midnight and asked me to marry him. There was a contract. There was money. Everything Adrian said is true. Adrian opened his mouth to interrupt, but Evelyn continued, but Adrian doesn't know what happened after that. She turned toward Nathan, and in that moment, she no longer saw the powerful Mafia boss. She saw the man who had sat beside her bed when nightmares tore her open. The man who had learned to feed chickens because she asked him to. The man who had kissed her under the moonlight as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Nathan Sinclair could have had anyone, Evelyn said, and her voice began to tremble slightly. Women who are rich, beautiful, powerful. But he chose to live in my small house. He learned to fix fences even when his hands blistered. He sat and sold apples at the fair like a real farmer. Tears began to slip down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. He stayed with me when I cried for my parents. He told me about his mother, something he'd never told anyone. He protected me from the man who threatened me for 2 years. Evelyn looked straight at Mr. Castellano. You're asking if this is a real marriage. I'll answer you. At first, it wasn't. At first, it was only an agreement. But now it's different. She drew a steadying breath. I love Nathan Sinclair. Not because of the money, not because he protects me. I love him because he's the best man I've ever known. Even if he never believes that about himself, she turned to Adrian. You can bring all the proof you want, but no proof can show whether love is real or fake. Love isn't written into a contract. It's here. She pressed a hand to her chest. And I'm willing to stand here in front of all of you and swear that I love this man with my whole heart. The silence stretched on. Adrian went pale, unable to find a word. Then Mr. Castellano spoke. We will vote. The Castellano family votes for Nathan Sinclair. The Romano family votes for Nathan Sinclair. The Chen family votes for Nathan Sinclair. The Volkov family. Volkov looked at Adrian for a moment and votes for Adrian Sinclair. 4-1, Mr. Castellano declared. Nathan Sinclair remains the head of the Sinclair family. Adrian sprang to his feet, his face red with rage, then turned and stormed out without a word. On the drive home in the black SUV, Nathan took Evelyn's hand. You said you love me, he said, his voice rough. In front of everyone. Evelyn looked at him, her heart stumbling again. I told the truth. Nathan was silent for a long time. Then he lifted her hand to his mouth and kissed it softly. I love you too, Evelyn. Truly. And for the first time, Evelyn saw that those gray eyes were no longer cold. They were warm, gentle, and full of love. That night, Nathan didn't sleep on the living room sofa anymore. When they reached the farm, Evelyn took his hand and led him upstairs into her small bedroom. No words were needed. They'd said enough already. Now it was time to let action take the place of speech. The room was cramped with an old double bed and an oak wardrobe Evelyn's father had built by hand. Nathan stood in the middle of it, looking out of place among the simple furniture. But when Evelyn turned back to him, she saw he was smiling. A real smile, not forced, not hidden, smaller than I expected, he said. Get used to it, Evelyn replied. Smiling, too. This is our home. Our word tasted strangely sweet on her tongue. The days that followed passed like a dream. They woke together each morning. Nathan learned to make coffee the way Evelyn liked it, and she learned to tolerate the fact that he always rose half an hour before her to check security around the farm. They worked together, cooked together, and every night they sat on the porch beneath the stars, hand in hand. One night, lying in the dark, Nathan began to talk. He told her about his childhood, about a cold father who demanded perfection, about a gentle mother who had left too soon. He told her about the first time he held a gun at 16 when a rival gang attacked the family. He told her about the first person he killed, a hired assassin sent to murder his father. "I didn't feel anything," Nathan said, his voice low and distant. "That's the scariest part. I took a life, and I felt nothing at all." Evelyn lay quietly beside him and listened. Nathan went on telling her about the years of climbing to the top of power, about the ruthless decisions he'd been forced to make, about the people he'd lost and the people he'd been forced to remove. He told her about sleepless nights, about faces that haunted his nightmares, about the loneliness of standing in the middle of hundreds of men who answered to him. "I'm not a good man, Evelyn," he said, his voice catching. "I've done things you can't even imagine. I've destroyed other families. I've taken the lives of enemies and even innocents who were caught in the middle. I'm the monster Adrian says I am." Evelyn turned and placed her hand on his chest, feeling the hard, urgent beat of his heart under her palm. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. Nathan was silent for a long time. "Some of them, no, they deserve to die, but there are nights. I still see their faces. The ones who didn't deserve to die for our wars." "Then you're not a monster," Evelyn said. "Monsters don't regret. Monsters don't lose sleep over what they've done." She lifted herself slightly and searched, the gray eyes glimmering in the dark. "I don't know the man you used to be. I only know the man you are now. The man who learned to feed chickens for me. The man who sat beside me when I cried. The man who was willing to risk everything to protect me." Nathan looked at her. Pain and hope tangled in his gaze. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm afraid of losing you," Evelyn answered. "That's the only thing I'm afraid of." Nathan pulled her into his arms and held her tight as if he feared she might vanish. They stayed that way until dawn began to show, saying nothing more, only feeling each other's warmth in the quiet. The happy days continued. Nathan slowly changed, his smile appearing more often, the scar on his cheek seeming to fade whenever he smiled. Evelyn changed, too. She stopped having nightmares about her parents. She stopped flinching whenever she heard a car at the gate. They had found each other. Two broken souls learning how to heal side by side. But darkness never forgives the ones who find the light. And Adrian Sinclair still hadn't given up. 1 week after the council session, Evelyn decided to visit her parents' grave. She hadn't gone since marrying Nathan, and she wanted to talk to them, wanted to tell them about the man who had stepped into her life. Nathan wanted to come with her, but he had an important meeting with Mr. Castellano that couldn't be postponed. He looked at her with worry, but Evelyn reassured him she'd be fine. The cemetery was only a 20-minute drive from the farm, and Dante would take her. Nathan agreed reluctantly, kissed her forehead, then left for the city. Evelyn should have realized something was wrong when Dante got an urgent call halfway there and had to turn the car around. She should have been on guard when he left her alone at the cemetery for only 15 minutes while he handled the problem. But she was too focused on her parents' headstone, too lost in memory and in everything she wanted to say. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her. She didn't have time to react when a hand clamped over her mouth and a sharp chemical smell flooded her nose. The world spun, then slipped into darkness. When Evelyn woke, she found herself on freezing concrete in a dark basement. Her hands were tied behind her back and her ankles were chained to the wall, her head throbbed, her mouth dry and bitter from the sedative. She struggled up, looking around. No windows, only a weak yellow bulb hanging from the ceiling and a steel door shut tight at the far end. Footsteps sounded, then the door opened. Adrian Sinclair walked in, still in a flawless suit. Still wearing that cold, habitual smile. He dragged a chair over and sat in front of her, studying her the way someone studies an insect pinned to a board. Finally awake, Adrian said, his voice gentle as if they were chatting at a party. "I was worried you'd sleep all day. What do you want?" Evelyn asked, her voice but steady. Adrian tilted his head, watching her with curiosity. "You know, I underestimated you. I thought you were just a greedy country girl. But you're far bolder than I expected. You kidnapped me to compliment me. I kidnapped you to send a message to my brother." Adrian stood and paced the basement. "Nathan will have to choose. You or the Empire. I'd bet he chooses the Empire. Power always matters more than love in our world." Evelyn met his eyes. "You don't understand him." Adrian laughed, the sound ringing through the basement like a warped bell. "You think you understand him. You've known him for a few months. I've lived with him my whole life. Nathan Sinclair is a monster like me. Like our father. We don't know how to love. We only know how to possess." "You're wrong." Adrian stopped and turned. "Oh, Nathan knows how to love," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength. "He just never had anyone love him back. He grew up with a father who only demanded and a mother who died too soon. No one taught him how to show tenderness. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a heart. She leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed, her eyes locked on his. And what about you, Adrian? Has anyone ever loved you? Or did you only have a mother who kept feeding you the idea that you deserved more? You don't want the empire because you need it. You want it because you think it will prove you're worth something. But power won't fill the hole inside you. Adrian slapped her. Evelyn fell sideways, her cheek burning, her ear ringing. But she didn't cry. She pushed herself upright again and looked at him without flinching. You should learn to keep your mouth shut, Adrian snarled, his face flushed with rage. And you should learn to face the truth, Evelyn replied, her calm almost frightening. You can kill me, but it won't make you happy. It won't make your father proud from the grave. It will only make you emptier. Adrian stared at her, jaw clenched, fist tight. Then he turned and strode out of the basement, slamming the door behind him. Evelyn sat alone in the dark, her cheeks still burning, her hands still bound. But she wasn't afraid. She knew Nathan would come, and she knew that no matter what happened, she would never bow to Adrian Sinclair. Nathan got the news that Evelyn was missing while he was in a meeting with Mr. Castellano. Dante called, his voice frantic, saying they'd been ambushed at the cemetery. He'd been knocked unconscious. And when he came to, Evelyn was gone. Nathan couldn't remember what he said to Mr. Castellano. He couldn't remember how he drove back to the farm. All he knew was that fear was crushing him from the inside. The kind of fear he hadn't felt since his mother died. He mobilized everyone, every soldier, every connection, every source. He threatened, bribed, interrogated, did anything he could to find Evelyn. And when one of Adrian's men was caught and gave up the location, Nathan didn't waste a single second. An abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city where Adrian was holding Evelyn. Nathan went there with Dante and 20 men surrounding the entire area, but he didn't wait for his team to take position. He kicked the door in and walked inside alone. Adrian was standing in the middle of the warehouse, hands clasped behind his back as if he'd been waiting. Behind Adrian was the door leading down to the basement where Evelyn was being kept. Brother Adrian smiled, the same cold smile as always, faster than I expected. Where's Evelyn? Nathan asked, his voice low and dangerous, like the growl of a beast. Safe for now? Adrian tilted his head, studying Nathan with open interest. Do you know what the most interesting part is? I thought you'd hesitate. I thought you'd weigh her against the empire. But you came immediately. No thinking, no calculating. Is she that important to you? You don't understand. Nathan took a step forward. Gray eyes turned to ice. Evelyn isn't something I weigh. She's everything. She's the reason I still want to live in this miserable world. Adrian opened his mouth to respond, but Nathan didn't give him the chance. You want the empire, take it. You want the money, take it all. You want power, prestige, everything father left, I'll give you all of it. Nathan stopped just a few steps away from Adrian. But if you touch Evelyn, if you hurt her by even a single hair, I'll kill you. Not for the empire. Not for the family. Because she's everything to me. For the first time, Nathan saw Adrian's smile disappear. He stared at Nathan, and something Evelyn hadn't expected flickered in his eyes. Fear. You're insane, Adrian said. And his voice wasn't so confident. Now, who is she that you'd give up everything? She's the one who showed me who I could be if I wasn't a monster, Nathan said. She's the light in my darkness, and I won't let you put that light out. Gunshots cracked outside. Dante and his team had begun the assault, neutralizing Adrian's men. Adrian turned, realizing he was completely surrounded. He went for his gun, but Nathan was faster. One brutal punch to the face dropped Adrian, his weapon skittering away. Nathan didn't stop to deal with his brother. He ran down to the basement, kicked the steel door open, and saw Evelyn sitting there, wrists bound, cheek bruised, but her eyes still bright the moment she saw him. Nathan, she whispered. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking as he untied the ropes. Are you okay? Did he do anything to you? Where are you hurt? I'm okay, Evelyn said. Tears sliding down her face. I knew you'd come. Nathan pulled her into his arms and held her tight as if she might vanish. I thought I lost you, he choked out. I thought I'd never see you again. I'm here, Evelyn whispered, arms wrapping around him. I'll always be here. Nathan lifted her face, looked into her brown eyes, shimmering with tears. Then he kissed her in that dark basement amid the wreckage of rescue, with chaos echoing above. It was the kiss of a man who had just found the most precious thing in his life again. And Evelyn kissed him back with all the love and relief surging in her chest. 3 days after the kidnapping, the Council of 5 Families convened to deal with Adrian Sinclair. The familiar meeting room now carried a tension sharper than anything Evelyn had felt there before. Adrian stood in the center with his hands cuffed, his face bruised from Nathan's beating, yet his eyes still held that arrogant defiance as he looked around at everyone. Under council law, Kidnapping the wife of a family head was treason and the punishment was death. Nathan had full authority to decide his brother's fate. Mr. Castellano finished reading the charges, then turned to Nathan. Nathan Sinclair is head of the Sinclair family and the injured party. You have the right to pass sentence. How do you wish to deal with Adrian? Nathan rose, gray eyes cold on Adrian. He'd thought about this moment for 3 days. Had imagined killing Adrian with his own hands to repay what he'd done to Evelyn. But last night, Evelyn had spoken to him. You can kill him, she'd said, her voice gentle but firm. But you'll live with it for the rest of your life. Adrian is your brother, no matter how terrible he is. Killing him won't erase what happened. It will only add one more scar inside you. Nathan had tried to argue, but Evelyn had placed her hand over his chest, right above his heart. I don't want you to carry more darkness because of me. I want you to step out of the darkness, not sink deeper into it. Now standing before the council, Nathan remembered her words. He looked at Adrian, at the brother who had hated him his whole life, who had tried to destroy everything he had. And he made his decision. Exile, Nathan said, his voice carrying through the room. Adrian Sinclair will be stripped of all power and all assets tied to the family. He will be expelled from the territory of the 5 families and will never be permitted to return. If he violates this, he will die. Adrian stared at Nathan. And for the first time, the arrogance drained from his face. In its place was shock, and perhaps the faintest trace of gratitude he would never admit. She changed you, Adrian said quietly as he was led away. I didn't think anyone could do that. She didn't change me, Nathan replied. She showed me who I could be. Adrian was taken to the airport that same afternoon and flown to Europe, never allowed to set foot back again. Vivian, Adrian's mother, left with her son, not speaking a single word to Nathan. Raymond Baxter, the lone shark who had tormented Evelyn for 2 years, wasn't so fortunate. He was stripped of everything he owned, beaten until he was barely alive, then driven out of the region with a warning that if he ever appeared again, he would die and no one would ever find the body. Evelyn never learned the details of what happened to Raymond. And she didn't ask. She only knew that the ghost that had haunted her for 2 years was finally gone. That night, Nathan held her close and whispered against her ear, "Thank you for what? For not letting me become the man who killed his own brother." 6 months had passed since the day Adrian was sent into exile. 6 months of peace Evelyn had never tasted in her life. The Harper farm was alive again, the apple orchard lush and green, the chickens fat and thriving, the fences solid now, repaired by Nathan's own hands. He still ran the Sinclair empire, but he worked remotely more often, spending most of his time on the farm with Evelyn. They built a life together, not because of a contract, not because of a deal, but because they chose each other every single day. One late spring afternoon, Nathan told Evelyn he wanted to take her somewhere. She didn't ask where. She only changed her clothes and got into the car with him. When the SUV stopped in front of the familiar cemetery, Evelyn understood. Nathan opened her door, took her hand, and led her between the rows of headstones. They stopped at the grave of Robert and Catherine Harper, 2 stone markers standing side by side beneath the shade of an old oak. Evelyn looked at her parents' names carved into the stone and felt tears rise in her throat. She'd come here many times over the past 6 months, telling them about Nathan, about her new life, about the happiness she'd found. But today felt different. Nathan stood beside her, quiet for a long moment before he finally spoke. "I want to talk to your parents." Evelyn stared at him, startled. Nathan lowered himself to his knees in front of the grave, head bowed, his voice low and sincere. "My name is Nathan Sinclair. I know you didn't know me, and if you were still alive, you might not accept me. I'm a dangerous man. I've done terrible things in my life, but I love your daughter. I love her more than anything in this world." He lifted his head and looked at the headstone as if he were looking into their eyes. "I promise I'll protect her, cherish her, and do everything I can to make her happy. I'm asking your permission to stand beside her for the rest of my life." Evelyn stood there with tears streaming down her cheeks. She'd never seen Nathan like this. So humble, so earnest. Nathan rose and turned to her. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box, and went down on one knee in front of her. "Evelyn," he said as he opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring. Nothing like his mother's band she was already wearing. "The first ring I put on your finger because of a deal. This ring I want to give you because of love." He looked up, gray eyes, warm and full of devotion. 6 months ago, you married me to save your farm and to help me keep my empire. But today, I want to ask you a different question." He took her hand and his voice trembled slightly. "Evelyn Harper, will you marry me for love? Not because of a contract, not because of protection? Not because of anything else except that you love me?" Evelyn looked at the man kneeling before her. The powerful Mafia boss who had learned to feed chickens for her, who had sold apples at the fair for her, who had been willing to give up everything for her. She lowered herself until she was level with him, cradling his face in both hands. "I will," she whispered through tears. "I've been saying yes for a long time. I'll always say yes." Nathan slid the new ring onto her finger beside the older one, his mother's ring. Then he kissed her right there in front of her parents' grave beneath the old oak with gentle afternoon sunlight falling over them. And Evelyn believed that somewhere in heaven, her parents were smiling. Nathan and Evelyn's real wedding took place on a breathtaking spring day right there on the Harper farm. The apple orchard was bursting with white blossoms, petals drifting on the wind like snowfall in warm air. They invited only a small group of guests, just the people who truly mattered to them. Mr. Castellano and Mrs. Romano came as representatives of the council. Dante and Gloria stood as witnesses. Martha, the kind diner owner, cried through the entire ceremony, and Father Joseph, once again, officiated. Evelyn wore a new wedding dress Nathan had ordered, especially for her, but she still wore her mother's pearl necklace. Nathan wore a black suit, but the cold distance he'd carried the day they first met was gone. He stood beneath an arch of apple blossoms, watching her walk toward him with eyes full of love. When Father Joseph asked them to speak their vows, Nathan took Evelyn's hands and said, "You came to me when I only knew darkness. You brought light into my life, taught me how to love, taught me how to become a better man. I don't deserve you, but I'll spend my whole life trying to. I swear I'll protect you, cherish you, and stand by you until my final breath." Evelyn looked into his eyes, her voice trembling with emotion. "You came to me when I thought I'd lost everything. You showed me I could still love and be loved. I don't need you to be perfect. I only need you to be you. I swear I'll stand beside you in darkness and in light, in hardship and in happiness forever." They kissed beneath the apple blossom arch. And this time it wasn't a kiss of obligation or ceremony. It was the kiss of two people who truly loved each other, who had crossed storms just to reach one another. 2 years later, the Harper farm was no longer a small piece of land struggling under debt. With Nathan's investment and Evelyn's care, it had become a well-known organic farm in the region, supplying apples and produce to many high-end restaurants. But what made Evelyn most proud wasn't the farm's growth. It was the Harper Foundation, the charitable fund she and Nathan had created to help struggling farm families. The foundation carried her parents' name, and every year they helped dozens of families climb out of debt and rebuild their lives. Nathan changed, too. He gradually shifted the Sinclair empire toward legitimate business, stepping away from the darkness he'd lived in for so long. He was still a powerful man, but now his power was used to build instead of destroy. And in the small wooden house in the Virginia fields, the laughter of a child began to ring out. Joseph Robert Sinclair, their first son, was named for Father Joseph and for Evelyn's father. The boy had his father's gray eyes and his mother's warm smile, living proof of a love built from the impossible. One evening, as Nathan held their son and watched Evelyn making dinner in the kitchen, he smiled. A farm girl and a mafia boss. Who would have guessed? Evelyn turned, looking at the two most important men in her life with eyes full of love. "Life is full of surprises. And you're the most beautiful surprise I ever got." They didn't have a fairy tale, no prince and princess. They had blood, tears, darkness, and debt. But they also had choice. Every morning they woke up, they chose each other. Every night they went to sleep, they chose to stay. And maybe that was real love. Not a passing feeling, but a decision made every single day forever. Nathan and Evelyn's story teaches us that love can grow in the most unexpected places. That people can change when they find a reason to change. That loyalty and sincerity are worth more than money and power. And that sometimes, even in the darkest place, we can still find light. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please hit like and share this video with the people you love. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more moving stories every day. How did this story make you feel? Did it remind you of anything in real life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd truly love to hear what's in your heart. Wishing everyone watching good health and a life filled with joy and peace each day. Goodbye and see you in the next video.